how's everyone out there doing today? This is Amy Hamilton, author of The Project Manager, Life is a Project, and The Consummate Communicator, Character Traits of True Professionals. I'm super excited to be here. We're doing 24 authors in 12 hours today, and this is in honor of Veterans Day, and I am featuring authors from Free Agent Press, which is ran by James Woosley, who is an Air Force veteran. And of the authors, one of them is Jeff McManus, who I'm lucky enough to have here. We had some technical difficulties this morning, so I said, Jeff, let's just do it at the end of the session, 8 o'clock at night. So now it's 24 authors in 13 hours now. So I have Jeff and one other author who we had some technical difficulties with. And I'm like, no, we're going to do this. We're going to get this done today. And Jeff, can you tell us a little bit about your book?
Hey, I sure can. But let me tell you, thanks for serving in our country, you and James both, and for we get to talk here because of what you guys did. So thank you so much. I met James in a mastermind program and really got to know him. And in this book, it's all about pruning. And so I am a landscaper. I also work at the University of Mississippi, director of landscape services, and did a simple way to teach people how to prune like a pro, how to do it the right way. So that's how the book came about.
So we talked about, you wrote this book, and this book is very much about physical pruning. It's about going out to the plants and cutting them up, whether they be roses or other plants, and making sure that you do it right. But
that's right. Yeah.
Pruning is also about leadership. And we talked a lot about pruning as a metaphor. And we even talked about this a little bit in some of the different sessions I had this morning, that when people are looking at resiliency, how do you cut away the things that are dead in order to have healthy growth? And that's something I do want to talk to you about today, Jeff, and about your website at Jeff McManus, where you talk about leadership.
Well, thank you for the question. It's a great metaphor to look at, but so many times plants can never be pruned, and they will bloom. But it's when they go in and we prune them back and we get that new growth and that new, we get actually more than just the one limb, we'll get multiple limbs. And so we'll get multiple blooms. And so that's one of the big things in eliminating things in people's lives that don't need to be there, so that they can reach their full potential. And that's what pruning does. It helps get away sometimes the bad things, sometimes the things that are just good. So it allows us to have space so we can do the best things, right? The things that are better for us, and it'll produce more fruit. So the pruning part, sometimes not so easy. Sometimes people feel like they're going to hurt their plant. You know, I never really thought about that, but people said, "Oh, will I hurt it? Will it hurt the plant if I cut it?" And it's like, no, it won't. It'll actually help the plant. It spurs on. It invigorates new growth, and that's what it does for us as human beings as well.
So I haven't read your book yet, Jeff. I have to be honest. It's definitely on my to-do list. I can't get through all the books at once, but I'm certainly going to try. But when I look at pruning in my own garden, one of the things that I've been told before is you have to cut off those kind of low branches, and I've heard them referred to as sucker branches. And that if you don't cut those off, it really makes it difficult for the plant to grow and thrive and be healthy. And I think in a lot of ways that concept of how we get these branches that are low, and maybe when we're young, they're good for us. But as we get older, there's things in our life that we realize we have to cut away because we can't continue to grow if we hold that behind. What are your thoughts on that, both for actual plants and our lives?
Yeah. So what you'll typically see on a plant that has what you identified it correctly, it's actually called sucker growth. On the bottom, usually you see it on trees. Like in the southeast, we have a lot of crepe myrtle trees. So you'll see that sucker growth. And why people encourage you to remove that is it takes away the energy, it takes away nutrients, it takes away the food supply that could be going to the healthy part of the tree and growing the tree's flowers and producing the fruit. So we like to remove those, and we like to cut them close to the tree so that it begins to heal over. If you just cut it, like if you just go down halfway and just sort of cut it and you leave the nub sticking out, it's gonna flourish again. It's gonna pop out. So we go in so that the tree can begin to heal itself. We encourage that for all kind of trees like that to remove that sucker growth is just a necessary part. When you look at it in life, sometimes it can be those habits that we've developed or those practices that we don't need anymore, that we need to get rid of. Maybe they're a negative habit. Maybe it's a habit that is no longer needed, and we need to now shift gears to let that bigger part of ourselves grow. And that's a great reason to remove that in our lives. And so, not always needed. You can survive. The tree will survive with the suckers growing on it. But if you want to see it in its beauty, if you want to see it in its fullness and its glory, those lower limbs need to come off. Those sucker growth and all that needs to be removed. And I feel like that in our lives as well. When we really want to reach God's full potential in our life, we want to remove those things that we no longer need, those training wheels, so to speak.
I just think that metaphor is so beautiful and so important. And the thing that you don't know is, I think you do know I live in Virginia, but the plant I was actually referring to is my crepe myrtles in my backyard. So I immediately thought about those, the importance of removing that growth. And so, when we're looking at making sure our plants grow, I know you focus on pruning, but as a landscape architect, one of the things that you do is you design. And I think life, everybody shamelessly should know by now, life is a project, but that means life has to be by design. And so as a landscape architect and somebody who's in leadership, what are your thoughts on that philosophy?
The design aspect is very important. Now, I'm not technically a landscape architect. If you want to, I just meant to make sure I'm a landscape designer. So
landscape designer, even better. So you do landscape design.
And everybody's going like, who cares? And it doesn't matter. So, but what we do in a design aspect of is we want to think of the project in several ways. One, for the plant perspective, is we want to put the right plant in the right location. If we do that, the maintenance of the plant becomes really easy to do. It's when we put the wrong plant in the wrong location that we really struggle and fight. So, for example, I don't know if you guys grow Eleagnus up there, but Eleagnus is a very vigorous, tough, strong plant. And I think you do, but you probably are fortunate enough that you don't have them. So they'll take over. They'll grab your ankles and they'll pull you inside them. They're very aggressive, so they're tough.
I've only lived in Virginia 2.5 years, so I'm going to have to go to my garden club and ask now.
Well, for those, you want to plant those way out away from the house. You don't plant that under your window and next to your sidewalk. So it's going to be very frustrating for you. And so in the design element, we're constantly, that's a big part is making sure we get the right plants in the right location. But we also want to use that space, whatever that space is going to that we want to design it for. Does it want to be a recreational area? Does it want to be a place of a refuge and a place where we can come and relax? And at the end of the day, it can be our happy place, right? And we can just be totally refueled for the next day and just relax. So as a designer, we ask a lot of questions and we want to know what the client wants to use that for. But once we know the intent of the space or what the ideas are, then it's my job to go in and use the palette of plants to help create interest, to help create some, maybe with smells, maybe with sight and blooms, maybe just textures. But we're trying to create interest that draws your eye and maybe pulls you around the corner, maybe around a path that leads you around. And we'll do that with sound as well. We may put a garden fountain in there. So there's a lot of elements to design, but it's critical when you get to the planning part that you do go with the right plant at the right location.
That is so interesting. And I want to tie this back to this morning, Dr. Phil Carson was on, and he's actually out in Tupelo, Mississippi, which I think is sort of near you, at least much closer to you than me. And when he was presenting, he was outside. And it was just amazing down there in Mississippi today. It looked like you guys had some fantastic weather. And he was talking about the importance of nature therapy. We were talking about the importance of like being able to get back with nature. And so as somebody who does this, who's in this landscape design business and looking at well-being, what's your thoughts on the importance of being out in the garden and all these elements that you were bringing in?
Oh, you're absolutely right. Especially with COVID, we are seeing now how nature is playing such a huge role in restoration, how nature allows us to go out and just relax. And so what we've seen is our parks being used more than ever. We're seeing our golf courses being used. People are just wanting to get outside. One is because, we see the virus doesn't, we're supposed to be safer outside, and it allows us to get out and to interact. And I don't know how it is and why it is, but there's just something about being in nature that restores us. That for most people it does. There are those who are highly allergic and afraid of nature, but for most, we enjoy that therapy. And there's been lots of studies done that just show the benefits of parks and green spaces and putting trees around concrete buildings and concrete structures. When they built New York in New York City, when they built Central Park, Frederick Law Olmsted, who is one of the fathers of landscape architect in America, he understood that was the first park he ever built, but how the vastness of green was able to restore and rejuvenate a person's heart and their soul. And then he was hired to go to Buffalo, New York, and create the area around Niagara Falls. And his sons actually came to our campus at Ole Miss and helped us in our design of the Grove. And this is vast 10 acres where students go out and sit and study, meditate, and just have a good time. But it's right in the center of campus, which is a great place to have that green space where people can even gather. Of course, it's a huge spot for football games, and anybody who's come to Ole Miss for a football game knows about the Grove. That's where we do a lot of tailgating. But that green space is absolutely vital today, more than ever.
I just think that's such an important thing that you shared about the green space. The need to get out there in nature. Normally when I'm not sitting here in the broadcast area and I don't worry about the lighting, I have a sunroom and I will sit out there just as much as possible to be as close to the green space as possible. And then, can take walks out there on nice days and just get outside and enjoy that nature. And a lot of what we've talked about today, focusing on veterans, is the need for people to heal and how this gives you an opportunity to, all three areas that it can be addressed, physical, mental, and emotional by being out there with nature. How do you feel about that?
Oh, you're spot on. I mean, the studies show and back that up 100% that yes, all those are critical. Dr. Phil taught me something about a couple of summers ago when we were interacting at a mastermind, and he had us actually we went outside. It was a beautiful spring day. And he had us take our shoes off and just walk in nature, but yet to be very conscious of what we were doing, to be very conscious of the feel that we were having on our feet. Now, I'd never done that before. And it was a neat experience just because we were really, our awareness was very high. We were paying attention, but it was, I don't want to say it was getting back to nature, but there was a uniqueness of discovering just the simpleness of the coolness of the grass on our feet. And that was very relaxing as we just didn't talk. We didn't say anything and there was no noise, and we were just there quietly in nature. So I think when we slow down enough, and COVID has caused many of us to slow down and just enjoy it, there's a lot of lessons to be learned. That's when you can get some of your best ideas, when you're sitting still and just letting your thoughts either wander or go through and just being a part of nature.
It's funny. One of my favorite things to do, and people judge me how you want, but I love to weed my little pathways. And the reason is it is that time to reflect. You can think about other things. But like when you're pulling these weeds, you're accomplishing, something. And at the same time, it's like you're in touch with nature. You're thinking about all these other things.
Well, Amy, you'd be a perfect weeder into leader. That's
oh.
So that was my second book, was Weeder into Leaders. And so it's all, you can come to our campus and weed anytime and have some therapy, because you're right. There is something about pulling weeds and seeing how your landscape transforms. That's what I love about what we get to do, is every night when you go to bed, you can see what you had done before you leave. I mean, you can feel good about it, and you usually go to bed tired, and it transforms not only your own life, but those around you who you helped impact by just becoming an artist. We care to call our guys artists who carry weed eaters. We don't call them weed eater operators, because they're out there stroking the grass and just matching it with the mower heights and making it look pretty with those patterns. Just a fun fact, Amy, you may not know this, but 62% of college students will decide in the first few minutes of a college visit if they're going to a college campus. And the number one factor is the way the landscaping is. And so they connect with that campus within the first few minutes. So there's something about nature. There's a whole reason why college campuses create beautiful campuses, because they know they want to try to attract those students. They want those mamas and daddies to go, oh, I feel safe here. I want my child to go here. So it's all tied into there. And then as they become students, we want them to have that experience of studying and a part of nature as well.
So important. I'm just going to real quick remind everybody that my two books today, The Project Manager Life is a Project, as well as The Consummate Communicator, Character Traits of True Professionals, are available on Kindle all day for download, and any print copies. 10% of the proceeds from today will be going to the Wounded Warrior Project, which I just put into our chat. I want to make sure people are aware of that. And we're really focused a lot on veterans today. And we're talking so much about nature and almost like nature therapy and how it can help people. And really just thank you, Jeff, for being on the show. I know we had some technical difficulty earlier and had to reschedule. So glad you're here. And I was just wondering from you if you could give your perspective. If somebody goes to jeffmcmanus.com, what can they expect to get from there? What can they learn?
Well, what you're going to see is how to engage with your teams. Well, what I've done is built great teams. We started in last place at Ole Miss with our landscaping, and we've won now 5 national championships as the most beautiful campus in America. And so what I've done is empowered our team to think like leaders. No longer are they victims. No longer are they blaming other people, but they've taken on the responsibility, and they've become incredibly good at what they do. And it's just average folks. And so when you go to the website, what you'll see though is how to grow great teams, how to grow resilient teams, how to grow those teams. And one of the groups that we look at, Amy, is the military, and how they build teamwork, how they lay their lives down for each other. For this person who was a stranger months ago, and now you're willing to die for this person. How do we do that in the workplace? How do we get people where they want to lay their lives down, so to speak, and help each other and become one of the best of the best? So that's what you're going to see on how to grow great teams, how to grow great people. It's weeders into leaders.
I think that's so phenomenal. I do want to share your book, Growing Weeders into Leaders. And the other thing I want to do, though, is real quick, your first book on pruning, and my books were through Free Agent Press, which is owned by James Woosley. He's a veteran. And I wanted to talk about, what was your experience like working with James on your first book?
Oh, my goodness. James is awesome to work with. I mean, he's the best. He's very patient. He's very understanding. He's thorough. If I had a question, if he didn't know the answer, which was, I don't remember him ever not knowing the answer, he'd find out. And a lot of times there's situations you run into where you can go left or right, and it doesn't really matter. It was nice to have James as the guide. It was nice to have him say, well, this has worked well in the past, and you could look at this example. So it was a very easy process with James. And he set us up at the time. He set us up on a website where we could share information, collaborate, keep track of all the moving parts that we needed. But my book has a lot of pictures in it, so there was a lot of things that had to be done, maybe reshot, redone. But we were able to. He's so organized, And so that helped me tremendously. I had a wonderful experience.
I absolutely love working with James and wanted to support him today in his veteran-owned business. And Jeff, I know I have been all over the board with you. We have these amazing metaphors. We've talked gardening, we've talked weeding, we've talked pruning. We've talked about your 2 books, Pruning Like a Pro, as well as Growing Leaders into Leaders. Those are highlighted here, as well as your website. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that I have not given you the opportunity to talk about today?
Well, I thought I'd give a free little gift to your folks. I'm sure you've got leaders on the call. And so I have a free download. I speak a lot about how to become an inspiring leader. That's one of the qualities, one of the top 4 qualities that's most admired in a leader is being inspiring. And I never really felt like I was an inspiring leader. So I thought I would give away, and it's called, if your readers want to text 44222 and type in the word Cultivate 2020.
Okay, so text 44222 and then CUL Cultivate 2020. And does it need to be capitalized or all lowercase or anything special about the punctuation?
Doesn't matter, just one word.
Let's make sure I got this right in the chat.
Let's see, I've just found your chat. Sorry, that's it. That's perfect. Yes. Cultivate 2020. It's a free, it's simple 2-page handout of 21 ways to become an inspiring leader. So my free gift to your leader, your listeners, and all those who want to become even more inspiring as a leader for their teams.
Yep. So that's text 44222 Cultivate 2020.
That's it.
Free gift. Let me write that down. People love free gifts. I really want to thank you so much for your time today, Jeff. I know we had some problems this morning, and you were so kind as to reschedule with me. I really appreciate it. Is there anything you want to say in parting words before we depart?
Well, thank you for your patience with me this morning, and thank you for having me on. Thanks for doing the show. Thank you for serving, and thanks to all of our veterans who have served and those men and women who are serving our country today. Thank you.
And thank you. Have a great evening.